What secrets lie buried in the clay tablets of a forgotten empire? The Hittite Empire, thriving in Anatolia from 1600 to 1200 BCE, stood as a titan of the Bronze Age, rivaling Mesopotamia and Egypt. Its capital, Hattusa, now a UNESCO World Heritage Site, has yielded thousands of cuneiform tablets that illuminate a society built on the labor of slaves. These individuals, often overlooked, powered the empire's fields, temples, and fortifications. In this third chapter of our series, following Mesopotamia and Egypt, we uncover the lives of Hittite slaves through archaeological evidence and written records. From their roles in sacred rituals to their subtle defiance, these tablets reveal a complex system of bondage. Join us to explore how slaves shaped a mighty civilization, their stories preserved in the ruins of an ancient world. Let's begin with the laws that defined their existence. Could a slave in ancient Anatolia dream of freedom? The Hittite laws, etched on cuneiform tablets around 1500 BCE, paint a vivid picture of a structured slavery system. Known as the Code of the Nezilim, these texts from Hattusa's royal archives categorize slaves into distinct groups: Nam.Ra war captives from battles against the Mitanni or Kaskians, debt slaves bound by economic hardship, and temple slaves dedicated to religious institutions. Tablets like Kabo 3.34 document their labor in royal estates, building Hattusa's 3.5-kilometer defensive walls, or supporting military logistics as porters. Unlike later chattel systems, Hittite slavery allowed limited rights. Slaves could marry free individuals, own property, or initiate legal disputes, as noted in KUB 29.8. However, their status was clear: injuring a slave warranted half the compensation of a free person. Economic records reveal rations, barley, wool, tools, distributed to slave workers, such as 50 Nam.Ra laborers on a temple project. Diplomacy also shaped their fate. The 1274 BCE Kadesh Treaty with Egypt included clauses for returning fugitive slaves, underscoring their value across borders. Slaves fueled Hittite infrastructure, from agriculture to urban expansion. Their efforts enabled kings like Suppiluliuma I to project power, but their regulated lives hinted at underlying tensions that surfaced in other forms. Next, we explore their sacred duties in the empire's temples. Did slaves hold the key to appeasing the Hittite gods? Religion permeated Hittite life, with ceremonies honoring deities like Tarhunna, the storm god, and Arina, the sun goddess. Cuneiform ritual texts, CTH 401-500, from Hattusa's Great Temple archives reveal slaves' critical roles in these practices. Temple slaves, often war captives resettled in religious estates, performed essential tasks: cleaning sanctuaries, preparing sacrificial animals, and transporting ritual items, as detailed in Kabo 4.13. The Ki.Lam festival, a grand procession through Hattusa's gatehouses, relied on slaves to manage altars and livestock offerings. Administrative records from the Yazilikiya sanctuary describe their work in handling votive figurines and libation vessels, found in temple storerooms. In purification rites, such as those during Mursalite II's plague prayers, 1321 to 1295 BCE, slaves removed impure objects to maintain ritual sanctity, a task deemed unfit for higher ranks. Slaves were excluded from leading ceremonies or accessing inner sanctums, reserved for priests and royalty. However, some tablets, like KUB 7.53, suggest their involvement in fertility rites, possibly tied to debated practices of sacred prostitution, though evidence is indirect. Their labor sustained the temple economy, producing goods that fueled state-sponsored worship. The Great Temple, spanning 20,000 square meters, stood as a monument to this system, its maintenance documented in logs listing slave contributions. By enabling these rituals, slaves upheld the spiritual order, linking their work to the empire's divine legitimacy. But did they ever challenge the system they served? Could a slave outrun an empire's reach? While Hittite records lack evidence of large-scale revolts, unlike Egypt's labor strikes or Mesopotamia's debt rebellions, cuneiform tablets document individual acts of resistance, primarily escapes. The Hittite Laws Clause 173 prescribes a grim penalty: confinement in a clay jar, for defiant slaves, likely a metaphor for severe punishment or execution. Tablets like KUB 13.35 outline procedures for recapturing fugitives who fled to Kaskian highlands or allied territories. Rewards for informants, noted in KBO 16.25, suggest escapes were common, especially during military strains under Tudhalia IV, 1237–1209 BCE. Diplomatic treaties, including those with Egypt, mandated extradition of runaways, reflecting their economic importance. The term Habru, appearing in correspondence, may denote displaced groups, including fugitive slaves, hinting at broader social unrest. Economic disruptions, such as labor refusal, appear rarely in records but are implied in administrative complaints about incomplete tasks. Unlike Mesopotamia's debt amnesties or Egypt's petitions, Hittite slaves had limited collective power, possibly due to the empire's decentralized structure dispersing labor forces. Escape remained their primary defiance, straining resources during crises like invasions or famines, as late 13th century BCE annals indicate. These small acts of resistance reveal the tensions within a society reliant on coerced labor, echoing patterns across the ancient Near East. How did these contributions and struggles shape the empire's legacy? Did slaves build an empire only to expose its weaknesses? Hittite slaves were the unseen force behind the empire's grandeur, from Hattusa's iconic Sphinx Gate to its fertile fields. Royal estate tablets document their labor in constructing water channels and temples, sustaining agricultural surpluses that fortified the empire against famines and wars. Records list hundreds of slaves allocated to projects, their rations ensuring productivity. The Bronze Age collapse around 1200 BCE, marked by Hattusa's fiery ruin, stemmed from invasions, climate shifts, and internal strife. While slaves were not direct catalysts, their escapes, documented in late-period tablets, weakened the labor force, as evidenced by unfinished structures. Scholars like Trevor Bryce argue that labor shortages amplified economic decline, though external pressures were primary. The integration of slaves, with rights like property ownership, minimized outright rebellion but could not prevent flight during crises. Post-collapse, Neo-Hittite states in Syria retained similar labor systems, preserving cuneiform traditions. The burnt ruins of Hattusa, uncovered in modern excavations, reflect a society stretched thin, where slave labor was both a pillar and a point of vulnerability. Let's reflect on their enduring story. Who were the silent architects of a lost empire? Hittite slaves, bound by law yet vital to society, shaped its temples, fields, and rituals. Cuneiform tablets reveal their regulated lives, sacred duties, and quiet defiance through escapes. Like their Mesopotamian and Egyptian counterparts, they were both foundation and fault line. Their story, etched in clay, speaks of resilience amid subjugation. Love this dive into Hittite secrets? Subscribe, hit the bell, and share your thoughts below. Which civilization should we explore next for Part 4? Join us to uncover more ancient mysteries.